Do you think that Tom Brady and this cast have an opportunity to upset one of the hottest teams in football in the Seattle Seahawks?
Kev, I got to say, it's going to be an uphill battle for the Bucs this upcoming weekend in Germany. And when I look back to that Bucs game against the Rams last week, it was an absolute grind for them. Granted, they did win it. They had a game-winning touchdown with about, I guess, like 5 to 10 seconds left when Brady hit up Kate Otten for that touchdown. But outside of that, that was really their only scoring possession outside of a couple field goals. And that was just a back and forth game defensively. Just both the Rams and the Bucs were just in grind mode just to try to get into field goal range. But I'll give credit where credit is due. The Bucs got that win, but going into this one, I'm not so sure that they're going to be able to get this one, because when I look at the Seahawks and what they've done this year, Kev, I think it's safe to say that the Seahawks have been genuinely one of the biggest surprises in the NFL this year, especially with Geno Smith leading the way, who's probably, I would say, at the forefront of the comeback player of the year discussion. He's got to be at least the number one or number two option in that category, because ever since he's gotten the start since week one with them, he's been nothing short of phenomenal. Granted, I wouldn't say that he's lighting it up like Patrick Mahomes, putting up 300, 400 yards passing and throwing 4 to 5 touchdowns, but he's playing just solid, modest football. He's putting up somewhere between 200 to 250 yards passing. He's limiting his amount of turnovers. And by and large, you complement that with what they have in the run game with Kenneth Walker, who is definitely in discussion when it comes to Offensive Rookie of the Year. I don't know if he'll win it, but he's been extremely effective at their running back position this year. And when I look at the matchup of that Seahawks run game going up against the Bucs run defense, I think the Seahawks have a very good chance to be able to effectively run the ball here, because this Bucs run defense is not the same compared to years past. They just don't have the same personnel in Tampa in that front four like they had maybe during that Super Bowl run in 2020, and maybe even last year. Their run defense was extremely impressive last year, and then this year they really have struggled to contain the run. And despite the fact that their secondary has held up relatively well, teams have been able to run the ball pretty effectively against Tampa's defense. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think the game plan, if Seattle's smart, man, they feed that ball to Kenneth Walker at least 20 to 25 times, and there's a very good chance that he could pull off 4 to 5 yards a carry, especially if their offensive linemen hit their protections right and hit their double teams to get up to the second level correctly. And you tie that in with what Geno Smith can do, put up 200 to 250 yards, and the fact that he's not really turning the ball over consistently throughout the year, I think that bodes extremely well in Seattle's favor here. When it comes to Tampa, Tampa's got to show me something where they can be consistent, and I just haven't seen that this year. That game against the Rams was, like I said, an absolute grind. They only scored 17 points in that game. And like you said, Kevin, in the intro, Brady has struggled this year. He's not compounding the issues that Tampa has offensively with turning the ball over. He only has one interception this year. That's the one silver lining to Brady this year. His touchdown to interception ratio is phenomenal. It's just, he just doesn't have a lot of touchdowns to show for it. And it really just underscores the issues that the Tampa Bay Bucs have on their offense altogether. So when I look at this game, I do think that this game is going to be relatively defensive, just because I think Tampa's defense is going to be able to step up to contain Geno Smith to where he's not going to torch their secondary. But I'm actually going to favor Seattle in this one over Tampa, just because I have more faith in Seattle than I do in Tampa right now. Tampa's got to show it to me and prove it to me more consistently that they could put up at least 20 to 25 points. And they haven't really been able to do that in the last couple of weeks. Seattle has. And I think by and large, Seattle is just a better team at this point. I do think, though, it is going to be a close game, though. I think that this is going to be a one-possession game when it's all said and done. But I think Seattle bumps up to 7-3 on the season. I'm going to say they win this game 23-17. So I think it's going to be back and forth. But I think when it comes to the second half, I think that Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker, and what that offense is going to be able to do with Seattle is going to do just enough to get over Tampa here and move on to 7-3, like I said. So that's how I see this game playing out. Kev, I'll kick it to you from here.
I mean, Seattle, we say it every week, is in a position that nobody in the world thought they'd be in, right? They're on a 4-game win streak. They're leading their division, in which contains the likes of the Super Bowl champs and the Rams, obviously the 49ers and the Cardinals with DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray, who can easily put up 30 points between the two of them when you really think about it. Now, in terms of this particular game, I'm going to go with the Seahawks confidently because, like Kyle already said, and we've already seen all season long, the Bucs are a walking inconsistency. One week the offense is able to move at least somewhat consistent. One week the defense is able to be consistent. The next week both of them shit the bed. You struggled against a weak you struggled against a weak Rams team. Obviously, Cooper Kupp goes crazy for 100 and some odd yards, but gets the bulk of it in one catch. And then obviously, you stop their run game, but then you can't run the ball yourself. You are able to pressure Matthew Stafford, but Tom Brady's eating turf majority of the game. It's so much tit for tat of who's going to be able to do more, who's going to be able to limit the turnovers. And like Kyle already said, both quarterbacks are doing a great job in terms of touchdown to interception ratio. Geno's got 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Brady's got 10 touchdowns to 1 interception. So it's not like these quarterbacks are throwing and giving the ball away to the other team. It's more so of, are you going to be able to capitalize on third down? Are you going to be able to capitalize on achieving points at the end of drives, whether that's 3 or 7? I think for the Bucs, they're going to need to capitalize on maximizing drives to the fullest to get a full 6 points in the extra point. I don't think that these drives can end in 6 because Seattle is a second half team, in my opinion, and I think that they're going to be able to make adjustments in the second half if they struggle against the Bucs secondary. Obviously, we know that DK Metcalf is a walking mismatch in and of itself. He's a freak of nature. Tyler Lockett is always finding ways to get open all across the field. And of course, Kyle already talked about their best player offensively outside of Geno Smith. It's Kenneth Walker. Out of Michigan State, the kid is just absolutely dominating. He's doing everything he needs to do, getting over 100 yards in a few of the games he's started since he's relieved Rashad Penny of his starting role. And I think that he is the reason why they are as successful as they are, because all the rumors talked about last year was this offense is too run heavy, or this offense isn't giving Russell Wilson enough opportunities to throw the ball or throw them into victory. You don't need to throw the ball 45 to 50 times to win a game. I mean, ask Tom Brady. We already know how that works. If Geno's able to keep it between 25 and 30 attempts, Kenneth Walker gets his obvious, 20 to 30 attempts rushing on the ground. The defense plays just solid. They don't need to go and lock Tom Brady and sack him 8 times. They just need to be able to keep him in front and limit what the receivers on the Tampa Bay side are able to do. You're going to have to obviously double team Mike Evans, because he's the best receiver on this team. Chris Godwin has been a shell of himself since returning from the ACL. Julio Jones had 1 or 2 good weeks to start the year and hasn't really done anything since. Obviously, the tight end Otten has been able to step up as of last week, but I don't have faith in this offense to move, especially when Leonard Fournette and this running attack has been basically useless. When you're putting the ball in your 45-year-old quarterback's hands over 50 times a game, eventually that's going to lead to some turnovers. So I think Tom actually makes some mistakes against this hungry Seattle defense. I think this ends up being a 2-possession game, probably by 10 points. I agree with Kyle, somewhere around 27-14. But I think that the Seahawks get a win in Munich, and I think that this is going to be a game that really solidifies Seattle as an official contender in the league, because all I keep hearing is they haven't played anybody. Obviously, they've only really beaten 2 or 3 good teams realistically. You can make the argument that the Cardinals aren't exactly good, but it's a division opponent, so you have to give them credit there. But they beat the Chargers, they beat the Giants, and if they beat the Buccaneers, that narrative is going to have to change, because the Buccaneers, despite them being a quote-unquote bad team, they're still a division leader. They still have a good defense, and they still have Tom Brady on the other end. It's the offensive line that's inept, not Tom Brady. So I think Seattle comes out on top, and I agree with Kyle. 7-3 is going to be their record at the end of that game.